Is this on? Okay, good morning. I am Molly Brinkerhoff, today's worship associate. Welcome to you, old friends and new friends, young and old, on this cold, cold March 5th and still snowy Sunday. Welcome to those in the sanctuary and those who are here virtually. You are an essential part of our gathering today, and we are stronger because you all are here. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved, just as you are. You are welcome here. So before we get started, please silence your phones. I'm notorious, and turn down the sound because I thought I had silenced it, and I noticed the sound was still going because I have YouTube up so I know who's doing, if we have anybody visiting or joys and concerns. So, and if you are watching us virtually, and if you are able, please sign into the chat box so we know who is with us today, and we welcome you. We will be having joys, sorrows, and concerns today, and if you are here in the sanctuary, be sure to fill out a form that's at the back that Rosie can hand to you. And if you're out there in virtual land, please type it into the chat box so we can light a candle for you. Please indicate if it is a sorrow, concern, or joy. Next Sunday is the second Sunday shared meal after church. Please come and bring a food item to share. We have men's group will be next Friday. It will be here, as of this moment, it will be here at the church at 5:30. Contact Jim Sathey if you have any questions. And if the location has changed, it would be in the newsletter? Yes. It will be in the newsletter. Or if you're not getting the newsletter yet, contact the office and they can let you know. Reverend Kevin is planning to begin a book reading group in late March to discuss Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. If you are interested, please contact Reverend Kevin, and so he can figure out what would be the best times to meet. And it will be here at church, correct? Yeah, so it will be in person. So, unless there's anything out in the... Oh, Cindy.
Today's the last day for our protein drive. If you have a free will offering to put in the basket for that. Doesn't have to be the actual food item, but that's what it would go towards, is protein items for the item of Paul's food basket.
Okay.
Next Sunday will be our first change for change in a while.
Okay.
And we will be donating to the Meals on Wheels program.
Okay, so again, if you did, next week will be Change for Change. So, and the proceeds for that, that's for when we pass the offering basket, all the cash that is in the basket will go to Change for Change, and they're going to donate that to Meals on Wheels. And then the protein drive is ending today. Okay, so if you brought any kind of protein to go to the food bank, Or cash. Where does that go?
Um,
Into this,
oh, don't put cash in the basket, but if you brought tuna or
right. So who do they give the cash to?
they can put it in the basket.
Well, they just make sure you mark it that that's what it's for. Okay. Anything else? All right. So we will now move into the sacred time of worship. So, settle yourself, relax, take several deep breaths as I ring the peace bowl. I will ring it 3 times. And think about how your breath is making you feel. Our covenant, along with our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles, is our guide to how our congregation will relate to each other and the world. As I read our church covenant for us all, please recite it with me. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. What's that? Oh, sorry. Prelude. We'll do that. Do it. Yes. We're going to go with the prelude. We will now be lighting our chalice. If you have a candle or chalice available at home, please light yours with me. And this is, chalice lighting is by Beatrice Hitchcock. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is an everlasting flame for this community. It offers its warmth to those who are cold. It provides light to those who would see. It purifies and transforms this sanctuary into a sacred space, this congregation into a sacred community. May its flame burn true and high and strong.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning is the poem, "Touch Not My Lips with a White Fire," by the Universalist minister Reverend Alfred Storr Cole. Touch not my lips with a white fire from the glowing altar of some peaceful shrine. Thrust not into my hands the scroll of wisdom, gleaned through the patient toil of the centuries. Give me no finished chart that I may follow without effort or the bitter taste of tears. I do not crave the comfort of the ancient creeds, nor the sheltered harbor where the great winds cease to blow. But winnow my heart, O God, torture my mind with doubt. Let me feel the clean gales of the open sea, until thy creative life is my life and my joy. One with the miracle of spring and the blowing grain, the yearning of my fellow men, and the endless reach of stars. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 95, There is More Love Somewhere.
Good morning. Today's story is from the Big Ideas for Little Philosophers collection, Love with Plato, by Duane Armitage and Maureen McQuarrie, and the pictures are by Robin Rosenthal. A philosopher is a person who loves wisdom. Wisdom means knowing things that help you live better and be happy. Plato was a philosopher who lived long time ago in Greece. He believed love is what makes you wise. Very long time ago. Plato said all kinds of things you love and care about are very important. You can love the things you see, like toys and ice cream and cars. Yeah. But Plato said it is most important to love ideas like goodness, truth, and beauty, which can be found all around us. Kind friends help you understand what goodness means. Honest friends can teach you the importance of truth.
And a brilliant sunset or your favorite song shows you something about beauty. Plato thought it was important to love people for what they are like on the inside, not for what they look like or what they have. Plato called this part of people that we can't see a soul. Our souls are really who we are, what we think and feel, and what we believe is important in life. Here's a little philosopher. What is important in your life? When people love us for who we are on the inside, we feel understood. Think about it. When do you feel loved? If you love people for who they really are and love things you can't see, you can be wise like Plato. You can be a philosopher too. And that's the end. Love on. Next is our song for singing kids out, and that's hymn number 414.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
This in and out. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect our joys and sorrows and concerns and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. I will now read the joys, concerns, and sorrows we received, and Reverend Kevin will light a candle for each. So, I have the first one is a concern from Courtney Higley. She's having surgery this week, and I'm hoping for a good recovery. A joy from Karen Schaefer. Happy birthday to Bob. Happy birthday, Bob, her husband, on his 76th celebration. I'm sure he wanted that acknowledged. A joy from Jessica. At a Natural History Day competition, a young woman, this is here in Idaho Falls, correct? Yeah. A young woman what year was she? How old was she?
Junior high.
Junior high. A young woman placed with a project about reproductive rights. I thought that was a very cool project. I would like to light a candle of concern about what is happening with LGBT plus rights in Florida. I think it's a very scary time in regards to that. And I don't believe we have any in the chat. And so we light one more candle to remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and for those who cannot yet share their joy, sorrow, or concerns.
Our reading this morning comes from a sermon given at the 1949 Universalist General Assembly meeting in Rochester, New York, by the Reverend Brainerd F. Gibbons. And there's a note on the patriarchal language. It is 1949, so you have to keep that in mind. So, While fully aware of its Christian heritage, many equally sincere Universalists maintain that an inherent spirit of inquiry has carried Universalism beyond Christianity. A new type of universalism is proclaimed which shifts the emphasis on universal from salvation to religion and describes universalism as boundless in scope, as broad as humanity, and as infinite as the universe. Is this universalism's answer? A religion not exclusively Christian or any other named brand, but a synthesis of all religious knowledge, which passes the test of human intelligence, a truly universal religion. Every universalist realizes that universalism has changed considerably since the days of its New England forebears, and many Christian dogmas have been gradually supplanted. Even the sketchiest summary reveals the vast differences between then and now. Divine revelation has been replaced by human investigation, ignorance by knowledge, superstition by reason, the closed mind by the open, stagnation by progress, celestial nonsense by common sense. Hence, Universalists today consider all religions, including Christianity, expressions of human spiritual aspirations, not God-founded institutions. The Bible, a marvelous work of man, not the miraculous handiwork of God. Jesus, a spiritual leader, not a divine savior. Man's fate in human hands, not superhuman clutches. Faith, the projection of known facts into the unknown, not blind creedal acceptance. The supernatural, merely the natural beyond man's present understanding, not a violation of nature's laws. Indeed, Universalism has disavowed many essential Christian doctrines. What remains that is uniquely Christian? God is not a Christian invention or monopoly. And Universalists find God more fully and truly revealed in the universe and man than in the Bible. Brotherhood is more reliably demonstrated by biology than the Bible and is common to several world religions. The supreme value Universalism places upon every human personality, here and hereafter, is actually more than Christian and is part of philosophic speculation entirely divorced from Christianity. Universalism does not insist that man must swallow some Christian capsule of creedal beliefs that is of supreme value to be saved. The avowal of faith in Jesus as spiritual leader implies denial of him as God and hence of Christianity. The very name Christian is derived from the title of Christ given to Jesus and accordingly to Christianity. However much Universalists may revere Jesus as a man and strive to follow in his footsteps, that alone does not make Universalism Christian. At most, Universalists are nominal Christians, and that solely by virtue of their own definition, a definition not acceptable to the great body of Christianity. For a long time, though formally acknowledging it but recently, Universalists have been reaching beyond the narrow bounds of Christianity to pluck their grapes of knowledge from vines growing in boundless vineyards of truth. And the religious wine pressed from them cannot be contained in the old Christian bottles. Only historical and emotional ties to Christianity have prevented Universalists generally from realizing sooner the dynamic effects of truth deliberately sought in which they now avow faith. Only fear of bigoted opinion will prevent an enlightened universalism from declaring to the world what fidelity to truth has made it, a unifying, universal religion. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. When the Universalist Church of America merged with the American Unitarian Association in 1961 to form our present Unitarian Universalist Association, for many Universalists, it felt more like an assimilation than a merger for a variety of reasons. Most obvious was that there were far more Unitarians in 1961 than there were Universalists. According to the historian Ernest Cassara, who wrote extensively about the Universalists, at the time of merger, the Unitarians represented 606 churches and lay-led fellowships with a membership of 106,751, while the Universalists could claim 298 active societies with 42,858 members. Some Universalist churches chose not to affiliate with the new denomination as a result of their unease and remained independent. But the relatively small number of Universalists was not always the case. In fact, they were one of the fastest growing Protestant denominations in America in the decades before the Civil War, estimated to have been the fifth or sixth largest denomination in America by 1850. The key to their success in those days was their hopeful message of a loving God and their doctrine of universal salvation, that no one was destined to suffer eternal damnation. It was a stark contrast to the wrathful Calvinistic vision of God preached in many other churches in those days. A God who seemed to arbitrarily decide who would be saved and who would be damned. In 19th century rural America, where church-going was far less regular than some would have us believe, it is easy to imagine that a positive message that was more inclusive and loving would be an attractive alternative if presented effectively. And perhaps there is a lesson for us to consider in the divisive political climate of today that often pits rural and urban America against each other. After the cataclysm of the Civil War, other denominations began to embrace the God is love message of Universalism, though not the doctrine of universal salvation. And many Universalists were comfortable returning to being Baptist, Methodist, or something else. As a result, the Universalist Church of America began a long, slow decline in membership, despite the heroic efforts of many Universalist ministers who continued to plant churches throughout many parts of rural North America. My favorite example is the Reverend Quillen Shin, whose picture is on your order of service. Shin was a prodigious circuit rider, minister, and missionary who lived between 1845 and 1907. And during his career, he preached in every state, as well as in Canada and Mexico, traveling thousands of miles a year, mostly by horse. He was known to be a talented rider who served as a cavalry soldier in the Union Army and was present at Appomattox for Lee's surrender. And this was certainly an asset in his missionary work. As he traveled from town to town, he often preached a sermon every day, even more than one on occasion. As a skillful organizer, he is credited with founding at least 9 churches and overseeing the construction of at least 40 church buildings. It is easy to see why he has been called the St. Paul of the Universalist Church. He was a man of many talents, and I have no doubt that his rural upbringing in what is now West Virginia helped him connect with the ordinary folks he encountered, often in places that were on the frontier of modern civilization. Though the focus on universal salvation in a Christian context was the foundational reason for the existence of the Universalist Church, the theology of the Universalists began to evolve around the turn of the 20th century with a growing influence of humanism and with more Americans becoming aware about the variety of world religions. Many Universalists began to study more science-friendly humanist ideas like their Unitarian counterparts. And a couple of Universalist ministers were signers of the first Humanist Manifesto in 1933. As a result, there was a shift to thinking of universalism as not just focused on Christian universal salvation, but as a potential religion that celebrated the universality of religious truth. After all, if belief in Jesus is not an absolute requirement to keeping oneself out of the flames of hell, what does this imply for a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim? And what about agnostics, atheists, and humanists? As the reading from Reverend Brainerd Gibbons' sermon attests, by the post-World War II era, a lot of universalists thought they were onto something that held the promise of a unifying, universal religion. They envisioned a world where religious differences would become a thing of the past, and presumably, universalism would become the one true faith that broke down barriers and crossed the great divide that sectarianism had created. Of course, we know that it has yet to come to pass, and if anything, religious differences are sharper than ever in American society and in the world at large. Fundamentalisms and intolerance are fanning the flames of conflicts that have been going on for decades. And they're at least a contributing factor in many ultra-right-wing movements that have emerged in several countries, from white Christian nationalists in America to all sorts of Islamic extremists and an alignment of Russian nationalists with the Russian Orthodox Church. The idea of a, quote, unifying universal religion seems hopelessly optimistic or incredibly naive. I think it would be very strange and likely impossible to live in a world where billions of people became convinced of the obvious truth of universalism and decided to cast aside their old beliefs and religious identity. And even if they did, I'm sure that it wouldn't be long before the new universal faith fractured into groups with different ideas about the details of this unifying universal religion. Theology is not something that can be tested by experiment and proven to be true. It is more poetry than science. It provokes deep feelings within each of us that are uniquely experienced. Even the earliest universalists were divided on the question of whether salvation was immediate or if some period of punishment was necessary in the afterlife to atone for one's sins. It is telling that just within Christianity, a religion that began with a teacher and a few disciples in rural Galilee, now there are over 35,000 different denominations and independent churches. A far cry from being the singular church writ large that has long been the dream of saints and reformers. Imagine trying to find a consensus in unifying all the world's religions under one large tent. What is more realistic, I think, is to accept and even celebrate the tremendous diversity of religious beliefs and ideas that have and engage with each other in a spirit of loving acceptance. As the famous Universalist minister Hosea Ballou said more than 2 centuries ago, if we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. The Universalists of old believed in the unlimited abundance of God's love poured out on the world, ultimately reconciling all of creation, universal salvation. By evolving beyond the theological boundaries of Christianity and broadening their understanding of the sacred, they may have reimagined the source of this abundant love, but they did not diminish the centrality of love in living their faith into being. Being able to disagree in love can nourish every relationship in our lives. It is important within our families, especially in our relationship with our spouse and children. It is important within our faith communities and for us to be effective in our interfaith collaborations. It is how I try to approach my work with the Idaho Falls interfaith community. And I am pleased to say that there is a growing interest among the participating religious and nonprofit organizations in broadening our interfaith outreach. And if only more people would take it to heart, it could go a long way in confronting the divisive culture wars that some deplorable politicians are waging, mostly to raise money and to fire up the hatred of others to motivate their base. Truly loving others would make it impossible, for example, to perpetrate the legal assaults on transgender people, and especially transgender youth, that we are seeing in many state legislatures, including here in Idaho. Taking love seriously can be transformative, what our Universalist ancestors would call a conversion experience. There's a story about Reverend Hosea Ballou that may or may not be true, related to his days as a circuit-riding preacher serving 4 congregations in New England. I ran across this in a sermon by the Reverend William Sinkford when I was searching for the quote from Ballou I cited earlier. One day, as Ballou was traveling between towns, he encountered a Baptist minister on the road, and they started talking about theology. The Baptist questioned Ballou's Universalism. "Well, if I were a Universalist," said the Baptist, "I could beat you, steal your horse and all your belongings. I wouldn't worry a moment about going to hell." Ballou responded, "That's right. But if you were a Universalist, that thought would never cross your mind." For Hosea Ballou and Quillen Shen and the Universalists of that era, there was little doubt that the incredible power of transformative love can change lives. They believed in conversion. Faith in the power of love was not only the source of personal spiritual transformation, but essential to their ability to find commonality with the people of all walks of life, and it contributed to the success of their missionary work. Even though I mostly identify as a humanist and religious naturalist, I think we lost a lot of our appreciation for the power of love as humanism began to dominate Unitarian Universalism in the 20th century. It is unfortunate, and it has probably hampered our ability to grow our faith by reaching out to people we may not think of as being the kinds of folks who would typically join our ranks. Rationalism and ethics grounded in human experience are important to my spirituality as a Unitarian Universalist. But I suggest we may have been too eager to distance ourselves from everything associated with traditional Universalist Christianity in their theology, rather than reinterpreting and evolving concepts like transformative love as a principle of our faith. We have lost something in our ability to find commonality and cross the cultural and religious divides that separate us. Loving one's enemies and transformative love as the path to the kingdom of God were essential to the teachings of Jesus. But such thinking was often lost among the Christian baggage that many Unitarian Universalists chose to discard. I still find it amazing that the word love is not mentioned once in our current 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. But this may be about to change. A few months ago, I spoke about the so-called Article 2 Study Commission that was created to revisit our principles and purposes section of the denomination's bylaws and proposed changes. After a last round of revisions in our General Assembly meeting this summer, delegates will vote on these new changes. If they pass by a simple majority, a second vote will confirm the changes the following year. Though I'm still not certain about how I feel about the latest version of the proposed changes, I am very excited to see love return as an explicit concern of our faith. but I'm sure the proposed changes will make some people uncomfortable. Part of the new language reads, "Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love." I think our Universalist ancestors would be happy to see us reiterate the importance of love. It is true to the spirit of Universalism from its beginning to the big tent faith our current Unitarian Universalist movement has become. And the more I think about the proposed changes, the more I believe there is a hint that a new Universalism is emerging. We are trying very hard to make our tent even bigger and more welcoming to a world that is fractured and needs the kind of inclusive faith we offer. We are reaffirming the transformative power of love as a spiritual discipline. Love with intention as the heart of our faith. And even though many, probably most of us these days, are not concerned about salvation in the traditional sense of being reconciled with God or the eternal destination of our soul, I do believe that universal salvation from the evils of this world is a possibility that calls on us to act for the greater good as we live our faith. Religious differences can seem like an insurmountable chasm between people who have more in common than they wish to admit. But when we come from a place of love and recognize the holy in others, even if it feels incredibly hard at times, we can cross the great divide. Our Universalist ancestors are worthy examples we should look to for guidance as we consider the promise of an evolving universalism of the future. I invite you again to rise and body your spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn, number 138, "These Things Shall Be." Our closing words are from the book Our Liberal Heritage by Reverend Alfred Storr Cole. It is a quote that is often attributed to the famous Universalist minister, Reverend John Murray, considered by many to be the founder of the Universalist Church of America. But in fact, it was written by Cole as an imagined conversation between a fictional time spirit and Murray. The Time Spirit said to John Murray, "Go out into the highways and byways of America, your new country. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their theological despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God."
We will now extinguish this flame, or we'll extinguish the flame with the following words. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.